last news is out of Paris, France. A Muslim convert murders 4 in police headquarters. So this is a really tragic story. Michael Harpon was a Muslim convert. He had been Muslim for 2 years. He worked in the police headquarters. He stabbed 3 fellow officers and a civilian colleague to death before he was shot dead as he tried to flee.
Okay, and they said they don't know. At first they don't know if this was terrorism or not, right? So this is again, as we're anti-Islamic atheist activists, right? We are all of that, all 3 of us here, right? But be careful, don't be biased. Just because he's a Muslim convert doesn't mean that this was a terrorist attack. Wait for the evidence. Wait for the evidence, right? So I think the police also said that they weren't labeling this as terrorism yet. They were, and people are like, well, if it's a Muslim convert that murders police in Paris, obviously that's terrorism because it's religiously motivated. So remember, definition of terrorism, okay, it's not based on how big the crime was. It's not based on how many people that died. It's based on the motivation. If it's religious or political, it's labeled terrorism. And I think people think like terrorism means that it's a bigger deal. People know motives matter. And if you don't know the motives might be Islamic, but you don't know until there's evidence. He didn't shout Allah Akbar or anything like that before doing this, right? There's no, I mean, we don't know. Maybe by the time that we're reporting this, now we know, right? But when it happened, the police was not labeling it as terrorism, right? And so and be careful, don't do that until you know that the motives were religious, right? It's very likely that it was, but we don't know. Another point I want to make is that look at the police here. At first they said that they weren't labeling it as terrorism. If this was a white supremacist right now, a white guy that shot 4 police people, and the police came out and said, we're not labeling it as terrorism yet, people would be coming out and like, oh, look at the racism of the police. If it was a brown guy or if it was a Muslim, they would definitely call it terrorism. But they don't point at no, they're consistent. If they don't know the motives, they're not going to call it terrorism. They're consistent. Remember the Vegas shootings, right? There was this white guy that shot a whole bunch of people and they didn't know the motives. How many people died? There was a lot of people that died. And they weren't calling a lot of people died. And they weren't calling it terrorism. And people were like, wow, I bet you would call it terrorism if he was brown or Muslim or whatever. No! The number of people doesn't matter. They weren't calling it terrorism because they didn't know the motives, and they're consistent. This guy is a Muslim, and they weren't calling it terrorism either because they weren't sure about the motives. As soon as they know the motives, they're going to call it terrorism. All right. The number of dead people is not the reason. Doesn't impact the labeling of it. Even if nobody dies, if the motives were religious or political, it would be terrorism. But again, our side, be careful, don't give in to temptation. Not everything is religious, not everything is terrorism. Even if somebody is a Muslim, it might not be terrorism. You don't lose anything from waiting, okay? Don't be like one of these people, like as soon as you see an attack, you're like, oh, it must be an Islamic terrorist attack. No, just wait. Wait for the information. And even if the information comes out, always clarify. Based on what's being reported, this is my opinion. So if the reporting changes, people are like, like you jumped on the bandwagon, you believe this because it gave in to your biases against religion. You're like, no, this is what I'm saying based on what is being reported. If the reporting is inaccurate, then what I'm saying doesn't stand. By the way, that applies to all Atheist Republic news. We're going based on what's being reported, and there's always a chance that what's being reported is not accurate, and if it's not accurate, then our comments do not apply. Do you guys have anything to say?
No, that was good.
About the terrorism stuff, I want to say this. I don't know if I'll get hate for this or not, but there was this book I read and I really loved this line that death is just a byproduct of terrorism. It's not the motive. So we really need to wait for the evidence if it's terrorism or not. Like you said, even if there are no deaths, it could be terrorism. Even if there are several deaths, would not be terrorism.
All right, let me address the two top comments. Frederick is saying, quoting the article, saying investigators are trying to establish his motives, and then Frederick is saying, why not just read the Quran? That would save you a lot of time and investigation. So, Frederick, are you suggesting that Muslims don't commit any crimes that is not Islamic? Because that's a very dumb thing to say. Because actually, I would tell you this again. I say this as an anti-Islam activist. Here's how I make it. Islam is cancer. Islam needs to die. Okay, so that's what I believe in. I have been fighting Islam most of my life. But I will tell you this also. Most of the crimes that Muslims commit has nothing to do with Islam. Most of the crimes committed by Muslims or by anyone else has nothing to do with their religion. Okay, that's just fact. Okay, so yes, no, just because a guy was Muslim doesn't mean we shouldn't investigate to find the motives. Okay, the motives it's possible that the motives are not Islamic. So yeah, please investigate. I don't agree that's the top comment. So this is exactly the temptation that I said, don't give in to that. Okay, this is not what Frederick is doing is exactly what you should avoid. Wait for the evidence. Second comment is by somebody that I can't pronounce the name. I think it's an Indian name, Abhijit
Kundu.
Abhijit, he's saying that diversity is the strength with a few laughing emojis, like he's making it. It's very interesting that. By the way, look, this is a non-white person making fun of the idea that diversity is the strength. So it's not just white people that are making fun of that. Okay, this Indian guy is saying that as well, which is I think he's an anti-Islamic Indian guy.
Indians make this say this a lot.
But let me just tell you something about diversity and strength. First of all, diversity is not a strength, but diversity is a sign of strength. Okay, diversity doesn't cause strength. A society that is strong will eventually become diverse, I think. And so that's what history has shown us, right? Like Roman Empire, Persian Empire, when a society becomes prosperous and has a lot of trade, has a lot of people coming in and starting businesses, will become diverse. So diversity itself, diversity of biological diversity is not a source of strength. Ideological diversity usually is a source of strength, because if you have the ideological diversity, usually the strongest ideologies survive and the weaker ones will die. Maybe, but it could be a sign of strength, not always. But biological diversity does come about if a society is prosperous and strong. So it does work the other way around. But it's weird that you're saying that to this news, when you say you're making fun of diversity as a strength when it comes in response to this news, given that this person was a Muslim convert, right? Convert. That means that the whole idea of being against diversity because terrorism and stuff, actually this news does not support that. Because this shows that fighting ideas matter more than fighting people. If this is an Islamic terrorist attack, to me, this is one more example for why stopping people or being against people does not reduce risk. Because even if you're not Arab or Middle Eastern or whatever. You could be a convert, and you could be a convert just by YouTube videos or Facebook posts or just reading articles or books, or you could become an extremist like that. So fight ideas instead of people. So if you're against diversity because of terrorist attacks, this guy is a convert. So your position against diversity does not hold here.
Atheists are under attack in many places. If they were Christians, their voices would be heard. If they were Jews, their voices would be heard. If they were Muslims, their voices would be heard. But they are atheists, and not many seem to be listening. Let's make it difficult for them to ignore us. We have built a global community, and now we are tearing down geographic, cultural, and language barriers so we can find each other and support each other. In the last decade, we have built the largest atheist community in the world. Now we're doing the same in other languages. With your help, we have started Atheist Republic in Persian and Arabic.
انضميت مؤخرا لأسرة Atheist Republic وحيصير عندي بودكاست باللغة العربية.
As we grow, we can dedicate more time, staff, and resources to start doing the same in Spanish, Portuguese, Malay, Bengali, Urdu, Hindi, and other languages. We are providing community, support, informative content, and amplifying the voices of those who need protection, especially in countries where people feel isolated simply for their lack of belief. We want to be there for them, and we are only getting started. Help us get there. Check in the description for ways you can support our projects.